So we are going to be getting into a game-by-game breakdown, starting out with the first game. The Green Bay Packers here versus the Detroit Lions. So it is going to be a high game total, guys, at 49 total points. It's also projected to be a close game at about 2.5 point spread. Now, me being a biased Packers fan, I actually lean more towards the Packers winning this game. That's mostly just based off of how both teams have looked over the past 2 weeks. The Green Bay Packers have been very impressive over the past 2 weeks, kind of looking like they're improving. And the Lions kind of got a free win out of the Giants, I would say. The Giants seemingly choked that one away, but the Lions still put up a lot of points against the Giants there as well. But yeah, just looking at the past 2 games, I would be favoring the Packers a little bit more. So if you were to want to bet on the Packers to potentially win that game, you could do it on Fliff, where they have it at plus 130 right now currently. That would be the best book to bet that on. But I do like them to win. That being said, it does feel like a major toss-up here. I did mention at the start of the season, I thought it was very much a mistake by the Lions to not play their players at all through the preseason. And I ultimately believe that's why they end up getting crushed by the Packers in week 1, because the Packers did play their starters. Now, a good thing for the Green Bay Packers is that they have gotten a little bit healthier at the receiver position. Or at least it seems like that's going to be the case, guys. Jaden Reed is expected to be activated from the IR. Now, that could end up changing. We'll see kind of what that means for him if he does end up getting activated from the IR. It is a short week. They might choose to have one more extended week for him to heal. Obviously, with this being a short week for them, he'd end up getting around 4 more days of extra rest to really be able to be good to go for the next game. Also, what can contribute to that is maybe Matthew Golden ends up being active in this game. He was someone that was kind of a surprising inactive last week. We also have Dontavian Wicks, who's currently questionable. We are expecting him to play as well. All of them are limited participants, and as well, you do have Williams potentially back there for the Packers. And then on top of that as well, guys, Josh Jacobs sat last week, I think simply because it was a short week coming this week, so they didn't want him to play in last week's game and then have a short recovery period for this week's game, which could actually end up leading to him potentially getting injured. So they played it safe and ended up working out for them. And obviously, he's going to be a big asset for them in this game. He ended up having a pretty good game against Detroit earlier on this season, but nothing like elite as well. But I do think him to score an anytime touchdown, not going to be a terrible bet. But my favorite bet in this game is going to be another Green Bay Packer, and that's going to be Christian Watson to get over 3.5 for his receptions. Okay, Prizepicks has this line at 3. We've seen it fluctuate between 2.5 and 3.5. I end up liking it at 3.5. So this is a bet that you could end up teasing a little bit. The reason why I like this is mostly due to the amount of snaps that he's gotten over the past 2 weeks, now that he's basically fully healthy from that injury that he obviously sustained last year. And so with that, he ended up getting 4 receptions 2 weeks ago against the Giants. Last week, he ended up getting 5 receptions on 7 targets, guys, playing in 70% of the snaps in that game. And this is projected to be a higher scoring game. This is somewhat of the weakness in the Lions defense as well. And it just really comes down to how well Christian Watson has looked over the past several weeks. And to me, he does seem to be the player that has really kind of benefited the most, really, with Tucker Kraft being out with injury. And I actually kind of think for Christian Watson himself, that injury that he did sustain last year has actually led to him being like a little bit more smooth with his routes. Just not being nearly as fast has actually led to him being able to break off of routes a little bit more as well. But overall, that's really the best bet I could find for myself for the Packers. There are 2 other bets I think are worth looking into as well. One of those bets would be Brandon McManus to get over 1.5 field goals made. Now, I know that the Lions don't give up a lot of kicking production, especially in regards to field goals to opposing kickers. Guys, only 16 field goals made on this, or field goals attempted by opposing kickers thus far this year. So we don't like that. Okay, I want to start with that. But part of the reason as to why is because the Lions have had a lot of high scoring games to the point where teams have been forced to go for it on 4th down. I don't necessarily see that happening here with the Green Bay Packers, where the game is projected to stay close. Now, it is a higher scoring game. Maybe that does force the Packers to go for it in some situations where they would typically end up kicking it. But for this to be a boosted payout bet, for Prizepicks, a demon bet, other sites have this as an average of about plus 113. And I just think that ends up being worthwhile there to take on that increased risk here for that bet. The Packers offense has looked better. They are getting Josh Jacobs back. Maybe you want to do his kicking points. You can there as well. The biggest thing with McManus is whether or not he is healthy. I do think he's healthy, and with that, he should be back to his normal self. He had a weird few game stretch in there where he was not looking good, partially because kicks were getting blocked, or he had a field goal that he was attempting from too far away. Remember, in that game against Philly, he had a chance to tie the game at the end of the game. He ended up missing that on like a 60-yarder. Not really his fault. That's out of his range, but that was at the end of the game. Still nice to see that he did have an opportunity there to kick a field goal. And then let's jump into kind of a weird one here, guys. We're jumping into the Lions. Jack Fox to kick 3 punts, to punt 3 punts, whatever. Or 3.5 punts. I don't mind this one. It's also one that I think is more or less fun to get to for a 6 slip bet if you guys are maybe looking to place bets specifically for this game and a 6 slip bet. The Green Bay Packers defense is very good. We know that, okay? And for what it's worth, the Lions offense has really not looked as good lately over the past few games. Like we look at the game log, guys, they did end up putting 34 points up last week, but really it could have ended up being 24 points if that game doesn't go into OT, and really if the Giants didn't end up choking that game away. And we'd really be questioning whether or not Dan Campbell should still be calling the plays there for the Lions. They did have a terrible game against the Eagles. Granted, so did the Packers. And then you look at the game against Washington where they simply crushed Washington. Okay, but that being said, really since Sam Laporta has been out, this offense has somewhat struggled to find their kind of identity. It's hurt Jameson Williams a little bit, and if Brock Wright were to end up sitting as well, that would end up being kind of a bad thing for the offense. So all in all, I think when we're looking at this bet here for Jack Fox over 3.5 punts, I can get there against a good Green Bay Packers defense. Now, I will say the flip side of that is if you think the Packers are going to win, maybe that forces the Lions to have to go for it a little bit more on 4th down. You know, there's all those variables in there as well. But let's go ahead and jump on into some of my favorite Lions pass catchers bets. And one bet that I like is actually going to be Jameson Williams to get over 22.5 for his longest reception here in this game. This is a line that I think is worth calling out. You might have to shop around with. There are some sites at 22.5, like Underdog has it. Some at 23.5. I've seen 24.5 and 25.5. Obviously, you want to take the lowest number there. So if you guys are some that specifically bets on Prizepicks and Underdog, I like the over much more on Underdog there at 22.5. So in the last game against the Giants, had a surprisingly terrible game. Now that game was basically all Jahmyr Gibbs. That shouldn't be the case here against the Green Bay Packers. And if we look at the previous 3 games, when we saw really Jameson Williams be put into more of an emphasis on the offense, he obviously ended up getting going in those games. On top of that, guys, the Packers defense could be without their top cornerback in Keyshawn Nixon. And then you also have Luke Vaness, who is still likely to sit there as well, who's an edge rusher for them. So those are kind of big components there. And so if Nixon ends up sitting, that could end up meaning very good things for this Detroit Lions offense. And ultimately, I do think that's why they are the favorites in this game by 2.5 points. And so with that, I do think we want to be chasing some of the overs here for the pass catchers. And I just think betting on Williams to have a big play is not a bad route to go. And then if we're talking about betting on some of the pass catchers, I actually think tight end Brock Wright is giving us a decent opportunity here as well. And so this bet would mostly just be a bet on that Packers secondary kind of struggling. That really does depend a little bit on how the refs are deciding to call Micah Parsons, whether or not they're going to be calling any holding calls. It's really been a big difference in the games for the Packers. Basically, you give Jared Goff enough time and he doesn't have to operate or move in the pocket that much. He can tear you up, as we know. If you get to Jared Goff, he just looks like a terrible quarterback. That is Jared Goff to a T. If he has enough time to throw the football, Brock Wright ends up being a great play, guys. Over the past 2 weeks, Brock Wright has had 80% of the snaps in both games, 83% and 88%. Okay, I do like the idea of getting to his over receiving yards, 23.5. More so than I do like his receptions. Now, over the past 2 games, guys, we do see 4 targets and 7 targets. We like that there for him. That's really what we're chasing here, is for those targets to be there. If he does end up getting his over 2.5 receptions, which if we look at that, that's a goblin bet on Prizepicks, which means that he's very likely to do that. If he does get that, he should be able to get over 23.5 receiving yards, and that's why I end up liking that bet. And then one of my favorite bets is going to be Jahmyr Gibbs to get over 14.5 rush attempts. Okay, this is a bet that if you guys are someone that specifically bets on Prizepicks, I kind of expect for it to be bumped up a little bit to 15, because right now the average line for it is minus 129, which I would be comfortable betting the over with as well. So part of this is just due to the fact that the way teams have had success against the Green Bay Packers has been establishing the run. Even though the Packers defense has been strong overall, the way you've been able to defeat them, the way the Browns and also the Panthers were able to beat them was by rushing the football. Now, this could ultimately lead to David Montgomery getting some more work as well, which if we're talking about getting work in between the tackles, like Rico Dowdle and also Junkins had there for the Browns, it's not a bad idea. And so maybe Jahmyr Gibbs does not end up getting 70+% of the snaps like he had last week and the previous week. But we have seen that when push comes to shove, they're just going to give Jahmyr Gibbs the football. And so I do like the idea of him just getting fed in this game for over 14.5 rush attempts. I wanted to find a way to be able to bet on Jahmyr Gibbs, and this was the best way possible. It is worth calling out, guys, that the Green Bay Packers do rank 20th in the league in terms of rush attempts given up, but only 12th in rush yards. So they're not giving up a lot of rush yards, but again, the defense has been pretty solid overall. And then before we go ahead and get into the bet of the day here for this game, I do want to call it the top prop bets that we are getting here for the Green Bay Packers, guys. It is Christian Watson for under his fantasy score. I'm just staying away from that. We really aren't getting that many crazy bets there for them in general. And then looking at Detroit, guys, David Montgomery for under his fantasy score is a bet that is popping up as one of the better bets. I don't mind that. Again, I do kind of think he's going to end up getting more work, but worth calling that out. And if you think Jahmyr Gibbs could end up struggling in this game, you guys would want to bet on his under on Underdog, where they're valuing him a little bit higher than every other book. And then lastly, guys, always worth calling out the prop line differences that we are getting fantasy score-wise for the quarterbacks between the two sites, between Underdog and Prizepicks, because, well, they should be exactly the same. Slight prop line difference here for Jared Goff. I don't really have a take on that, nor do I have a take on Jordan Love with his fantasy score. For Jordan Love, it's really just dependent on whether or not he's going to have to throw the football in the red zone for a touchdown. Okay, the Packers' rush offense has been extremely great. Emmanuel Wilson ended up getting 2 one-yard rushing touchdowns last week, so Jordan Love just didn't have to throw passing touchdowns last week. Either, like, it can go either way. I'm kind of just staying away from those two quarterbacks. And so with that, we'll jump on into the bet of the day. And so, again, just kind of recapping those 6 prop bets. Jahmyr Gibbs over 14.5 rush attempts. Brock Wright and Jameson Williams for over their receiving yards that we have him here at. Again, Williams is a little bit better at 22.5 for his longest reception. Then we're looking at some plus money bets. I like these bets, guys. McManus to kick 1.5 field goals. The issue is Detroit really doesn't give up that many, although the Packers offense has been an offense that can get into scoring position. And you just hope that they don't have to go for it on 4th down a bunch. Christian Watson to continue to play well. I like that bet. And then Jack Fox, more or less just a bet that I think game flow wise does end up getting there. If you guys didn't want to get to that, you don't have to. Now that's going to do it for this video. I do want to remind you guys of the 9to5 membership. If you guys would like access to the 9to5 tools, head on over to 9to5sports.com. Get access to all the tools available on the website, the golf tools, the NFL tools, the basketball tools, and all the prop tools for a low monthly cost of $10 a month. It's the best value out there. Take advantage of that. Thank you guys for watching. Good luck. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, comment your guys' favorite bet or bet that you potentially disagreed with in a kindly manner as always. Thank you guys for watching. Good luck. And as always, let's keep cashing.